to compare the rollout of the vaccination programme to the debacle that we now are talking about in front of us here today. The goals of the National Broadband Plan are very laudable, but on every level it fails every metric. It is an absolute disgrace, and most citizens in this country feel they're being bled as if they were some kind of gum beans for over £3 billion of taxpayers' money by a series of very convoluted company and corporate structures that hoodwink us into believing that somehow this is going to be done fast and efficient. Your colleague, Eamon Ryan, in 2010, to great aplomb, announced the rollout of a broadband plan. This is 2022, and we are witnessing an absolute debacle in the rollout of that plan. Indeed, in 2019, when the announcement by the government was to go down the road, the path it took, they met with great resistance, fierce resistance, I would say, from the Department of Public Expenditure. If you remember, on the basis of cost, affordability, value for money, exchequer risks, they expressed concern, indeed, that the state would not own the infrastructure after this £3 billion investment and once it's completed. How can you politically stand over this? I'm not asking you to answer me with legal niceties. I'm asking you a political question. How you, as a Green Party minister, can stand over the robbery of taxpayers' money to this extent without delivery of a service.
Thank you very much, Deputy. So I suppose I should start by saying that it's not a €3 billion contract, it's a €2.1 billion contract. And I've read many estimates of how much the cost is or how much it's predicted to be, and lots of different numbers are thrown around. But the maximum expenditure on this contract is €2.1 billion. That's what's in the contract. The contract was agreed in 2019, years before I took office, and it's my job as Minister of State, it's my role to implement what's in the contract. Now, the benefits of the contract are huge. They are very ambitious. They are no less than to bring fibre optic broadband to every home, every farm, every business premises in the entire country. And we know from the last 2 years that this is like providing an extremely basic utility that allows rural villages and towns to be revitalised, that allows them to become vibrant again, that brings jobs into them in a way that we had never considered before. In the past, when we wanted to bring jobs or bring study places into a village or a town, you had to think about building a factory. Now people are returning to their hometowns, working there, bringing money there, and returning to their family locations because of fibre optic broadband. 55,000 families in Ireland can now apply for fibre optic broadband in the intervention area, and Deputy Murphy tells me that another 45,000 can get fibre optic broadband from Air in that area as well. So we're going to reach all 540,000 premises, homes, farms and business premises across the whole of Ireland, and provide them with a level of service that is unimaginable outside across Europe. The rest of Europe is not doing this. They're providing wireless access for the remotest parts of their rural areas, and we are providing what is going to be a service that will allow you to study, to work, to conduct your commercial and social life, to obtain your government services, no matter where you live in the country. It's balanced regional development. It is a social project. It is a high-tech project. I'm very proud of it. I'm delighted to be in charge of it, and I'm using all of my energy and enthusiasm to make sure that it does get delivered to everybody. Thank you.
I asked you how would you politically stand over this debacle and the use of what is quoted as £3 billion of taxpayers' money, not all of it necessarily contracted, but there's extra spend in even outsourcing. The competitive outsourcing cost millions, and there are probably more millions going to trip us up. Now, what's interesting about all this is that a lot of the stuff about the structures, the corporate structures of this project were not known to us. We now know that there's a network of at least 13 companies across Ireland, Luxembourg and the US, and we know that David McCourt's firm only actually owns about 10% of the National Broadband Ireland, despite all these convoluted corporate structures. When you look at the map of the structures of the plan and the companies that are in it, it puts the London Underground in the halfpenny place. And I don't see how you can understand it or grasp it. And now we know that a vulture fund has invested heavily in it. A vulture fund who, in their documents, in their regulatory documents in the US, describe themselves as specialising in leveraged loans, high-yield bonds, private credit, distressed investment and collateral loan obligations. I think this is shameful for the government, and that is why I'm asking you the political question again, how you can stand over it. And given that the commercial terms of the contract have been redacted, how can you give us any guarantee that the 500,000 premises, homes and businesses that you just spoke eloquently about, the freedom that will give them, the ability and the sort of good future that they'll have, how can you guarantee that that will be delivered in 10, 15, 20 years? The pace of it is appallingly slow, and it's tied up in corporate knots and legalities that would confuse any minister. And don't tell me that you're not confused by it.
Thank you, Deputy. So you've asked me how I can politically stand over it, and the reason I can politically stand over it is that it brings huge tangible benefits all around the country. I think it is a fantastic project. I think it is comparable with rural electrification. You know, if you want to have a home in Ireland nowadays, you want to know that you have home heating, you want to know that you've got running water, you want to know you've got electricity, and you want to know that you've got broadband. And all of those things are going to be available. It is the provision of a basic service that allows for a better quality of life. That's why I'm happy to stand over it. In terms of the investors and the complex structure, the financial structure of the company hasn't changed since the time the contract was signed. It's a matter of public record. It is right that people examine it and that they ask questions, and if they're query it. But the main investors continue to be Granaham McCourt, Tetrad Corporation, Oak Hill Advisors, Twin Point Capital, and then shareholders from the management team of MBI. So, if that changes, we need to be informed. In other words, the Department of Environment needs to be requested for consent to make changes to that structure. But that is the structure that was put in place in 2019, and it hasn't changed. And I think you've said that these companies are they're capitalists, and they're investors of short-term debt, and they're linked with hedge funds and so on. And I'm sure that's all true. But that's what the system is when you get a private company to do work for the state. They have private investors who are trying to make a profit. At the same time, they can't make that profit unless they connect everybody up to rural broadband in Ireland, because that's what the terms of the contract say.
The comparison there with the electrification of the country is an interesting one, because it's one I've made in the past at the committee when this was being debated in the last Oireachtas, and when we had a previous minister who had to resign from his position because of a scandal, or an alleged scandal around it. Now, what I think about that comparison is that the very key difference is the one you just quoted. We did not rely on private, competitive, for-profit enterprise to electrify this country. The state built a state-owned, state-run company called the ESB, built Ardnacrusha, built Table Mountain, and turned the lights on up and down this country. If we were waiting for this kind of model, we'd be all still sitting in the dark, and this place would be lit up by candles. And that is my point to you about the broadband plan, how you can stand over, and you still haven't answered it. And I think it's disgraceful that you're not answering it correctly for me, that a Green minister, a Green Party minister, could stand over this sort of rip off Ireland of taxpayers' money, and at the end of it, still not own the infrastructure. Can you please address that point?
Thank you, Deputy. I think there really is a comparison with the rural electrification programme. My grandfather worked on the Shannon electrification scheme, on the massive hydropower that came in the 1920s. It was his first job. And he was employed by Siemens, because it was Siemens who did the work. They were brought in to do it. The work wasn't carried out by civil servants or even by a private Irish company. It was built by Siemens, and so that's the reality of what happened. You've asked me again, and I've twice told you how I can stand over this project. I can stand over this project because of the benefits that it brings. It is a hugely beneficial project. It is one that every deputy in this House knows is essential. Anybody who's living outside of a major urban centre knows that it is essential to the quality of life of their constituents. That's why I can stand over it.